Welcome to the Dance Studio Empire podcast, a mix of business strategies, simple tips for studio growth and success, with a touch of inspiration, motivation, plus raw and honest conversations to ensure you are building your studio empire. I'm your host, Jen Dalton, studio owner for 30 years, dance business coach, and the author of the book, Teaching Dance Beyond the Steps. My business philosophy is creativity is our superpower, and I believe we all have the means and ability to infiltrate this into our studio. Just sometimes we can get too busy, distracted, or overwhelmed to see that. So that is exactly why I am here to help you. So if you are ready to master the art of creating demand, unravel the dance of numbers in your studio, and run your business to its full potential, then you are in the right place. Okay, let's do this. Sit back and relax, and let's get ready to build your dance studio empire. Hello, studio owners, and welcome to this week's episode of the Dance Studio Empire. I just want to start by saying I've had such a great week, and this is because my clients are starting to see some great results, and this is the result of them being consistent and implementing, and their actions are now coming to fruition. So they're starting to have these wins. And at this time of year for studios in the Southern Hemisphere, it can generally be a bit of a stressful time. We're dealing with costuming and costumes and ticketing and re-enrollment, sort of that last rush till Christmas. And so I know it can be overwhelming. I'm living it with you, so I get it. But to hear and have these conversations with these girls is just, it's so rewarding for me to hear that, because it works. And so when I bring you information each week, telling you what I've done, what works, what doesn't, it's nice to actually see it and get the feedback from these studio owners. And I'm really, really happy for them. It's really great to have this feedback and hear the conversations about how it's all going for them. So I just want to shout out to them and say well done, because they're the ones putting in the hard work, and I'm just so grateful that it's coming off for you. So that is also a little bit of an inspiration behind today's episode. I'm going to be talking to you about how I scaled my studio. Now, this journey, it isn't just about the growth, but it's about the strategies and the steps that I used to be able to get my studio from when I first started 30 years ago with 0 students to where it is today. Because as you know, building a studio it's about passion, it's about dedication, but it's also about a lot of work and hard work. Also along with that is consistency, because it just takes time, and we are quite impatient beings now. Like, I think as society is moving faster, we get information faster. We have this expectation for our businesses as well. But the reality is it does take time. And I actually had a couple of conversations this week as well with a couple of studio owners who were saying, how long did it take before you could step back? How long was it until you got to this certain point where you were earning this particular amount of money? So, and I was good, and I literally had a timeline, because I was putting this presentation, this podcast together for you. So I had a timeline, so I literally could give them the information straight out. Like, it's just the honest truth of how it worked. And the process is long. But anyway, as I said, I will share everything that I did. There are things that worked, there are things that didn't, and you can take whatever you want from that and, of course, make it your own. We, of course, are at different stages as well. You might be just starting out. You might have been going for a long time. You might want a thriving studio, massive, lots of locations, or you might not. You might just want one location that you can manage. You can do all the teaching yourself. Success is different for each of us, and there's no right or wrong. It's just a matter of becoming clear about what your version of success is, and then working out the best ways to get there. And so hopefully in this episode, I'm going to be sharing some things, and you can take what you want and help you. So first of all, not just focusing on your numbers, but creating that community, fostering that innovation, and just empowering you to achieve your studio dreams. So, what can you expect from today's episode? Okay, I'm going to focus on two main phases. There'll be the foundational steps that led to my studio's growth, but also the strategies that I used to scale it further. As I have said before, there are foundational steps that need to be done before you start to scale. And I'm going to go back through these. This really needs to be done before you can start stepping into your next level, but you never stop looking at these steps as well. So it's not something that you can just set and forget. Well, you can, but I think it's in your best interest to not. But I'll go through those now. So the first thing you want to do in your foundational steps is being very clear about who you are and what you offer as your studio. You want to make sure you're able to define what makes you unique and decide what kind of studio you want to be and market that, of course, to the right people. If you get your marketing right, you're going to attract the right people. That's the first thing. The second thing is, in the beginning, just do everything possible yourself. So as much as you can, be in the thick of it. Be in the classroom teaching, handle admin, have those conversations with your parents, have those conversations with your students. Be hands-on with the social media and the communication and your teacher training, like how you're communicating with your teachers. Be as in it as possible, just so that at the point where you do start to scale and you're stepping away from the day-to-day, you know exactly what you expect from someone stepping into that role, and you can explain firsthand, because you've been there, exactly what you want. That's the benefit of that one. Now, the third thing is, in the beginning, again, just be seen, be known by all, because this is where you're going to build your trust and build a solid reputation in your community. And if you have plans to be around for a long time, your reputation is crucial. So being there, getting known, building that trust is really important, because you get to a point, hopefully, where if you do choose to step back, you don't need to be there, but in the faces of your families all the time, but your reputation speaks for itself. So that's the next point. Now, next one, listening and observing. So really paying attention to the conversations, listening to feedback, not only from parents, but also from students. Listen to what they're talking about in the classroom as well. And this way you'll be able to determine what's working and what isn't. And it's really important. And we have to step away from that being about us and having our ego get involved and getting defensive about those things. You might hear things, they're not necessarily true, but if that's what's being spoken about, or that's a perception, then it should be dealt with. And sometimes I think if we bury our head in the sand and we don't deal with that, that's when the toxicity starts and things become, pretty awful. So staying on top of that is very well worth it. And the final part of building your foundations is building your systems. And so this is going to include really clear expectations for your classroom, expectations for your teachers, your parents, your students. And I really encourage you to define and refine your customer journey and the communication that you have within your studio. These are essential foundational steps. And so those 5 things you should be working on those all the time. But at that point where you feel like you've really nailed that, or you feel like, yep, I've got it all, we're ready, that's when it's a great time to scale. So let's say we've done that. Let's now dive into the strategies that I used to scale my studio. And I'm going to take you across a timeline. Just maybe that will help sort of give you a bit of an idea of how long it actually took and what I did at those stages. These are sort of approximate as well. It's obviously going back over 30 years. I did my best to get my exact dates and stuff and numbers, but it's approximately about this at this time. So, all right. Now, the first thing I do want to say is, of course, the journey was not just a smooth, beautiful trajectory into success. It was a roller coaster. There were ups and downs, as is the seasons of our business. And I did speak about seasons, I think, a couple of episodes ago, and just how there are times within our business, we have a season within our studio. We also have a season within our lives, which you will go through as well. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Okay, so let's go. It took me 7 years to get to my first 250 students. So I started at zero and I got to 250 within 7 years. This was back in 1993. I was at school, so I was in year eight when I first started. So those first couple of years, I was doing school in the day and then I would go and teach it. It was, well, started in my parents' garage, but after that, it became just our local scout hall and local girl guide hall. Now, that period was just me, finding my way. And there wasn't much intention behind building the business. All I was doing was turning up, I was delivering a great product, everyone was happy, and all they did was just kept telling people, telling their friends about it, and I just kept getting more students. That was really it. There was no more than that. I was just honoring who I was being authentic, and then the word was spreading. Between 2002 and 2008, now this is where it was basically a slow growth period. So this was the end of my schooling. I'd been out of school now for a couple of years, and I was ready for more. Like I wanted to do more study. I'd finished school and then had a business. So I went straight into that business. But a couple of years into that business, I was feeling like I just want to do some more study, and that's when I started. Well, I joined the police. So I did psychology and I did communications at uni for a bit, and then I joined the police. And so during this period, my cousin was coming in and teaching classes, so that was fine. But I was studying myself. I was away. I then, in this period, met my husband, who I married, and then had my two kids. So this was a time with little babies. So the numbers did drop. My focus was now spread because I was raising babies and I was in the police. I was also doing extra stuff, like I did my fitness certificate. So I was running fitness classes and I was doing massage a couple of hours from home a week as well. Like I was sort of really had spread myself. But what we were doing is my husband was just starting to become more involved and interested in the business. And between this 2002 and 2008 is when we started really working to build solid foundations. So for him, this is where he started. He built our first website before websites were even like a thing or known. He also started on the SEO, which I don't even think SEO was a thing back then. But using his common sense, he was like, okay, so I'm building this thing online, being the website. People who jump on to search for something are going to put in words to search for what they're looking for. So it makes sense for that website to have those words, and then they'll be sent to that page. And so he's so smart. But that's essentially how he started and has continued to do that still to this day. But yeah, that's how we built up the SEO. And he was working on that, quite relentlessly during this period. It's also the time when I started to source uniform from overseas. I had no idea what I was doing. It was not like it is today with the options that we have and the shops available and, ordering online. It wasn't like that at all. And so I have a cousin who is also in business, and she had suggested this site, Alibaba. And I'm like, okay, jumped onto Alibaba, and that's when I started finding, people who could make uniforms. And I got in contact with several different companies. They would send out samples, and that is how I started sourcing uniform. And still to this day, I'm still using companies that I found back then, still sourcing. Obviously, the pricing is a little bit different, but that's how I got started. And it really did take about 12 months for me to find a company, see the samples, find out what I liked, the quality of material, and then to make that a thing, which did also continue to evolve. But yeah, it did take a while. I also had a bit of a period where I was making dance shoes as well and selling dance shoes online, same process. But this was all happening in this period of just this solid growth, but numbers had dropped. I think I dropped to about 180 at this point. And I was only teaching 3 days a week because I had young children as well, at my other jobs as well. So that happened. And so it was then 2009 when things really started to ramp up. And I became a little bit more intentional and strategic about wanting to grow the business. So when you think about, my my girls were obviously still quite young at this time, but I was a little bit easier. I was out of that newborn stage. So I did have a little bit more time and energy. And so what was the first thing I did? All right, first thing I did was I had a look at my timetable and I became really focused in on how I could make it as convenient as possible for families. So thinking about a parent bringing their child, what's going to be the best way to have them come and stay for as long as possible, right? So that's how I started with the timetable and became really intentional with how I put that together. The next thing I did is I increased my days. So I was at the studio more. So increased the classes, increased days. And then eventually we moved into a second studio space. And so where I was at that point, we were using, it was a recreation hall. We were upstairs in this old building. It had a bar and a couple of mirrors. Like, it was fine. And then, but also downstairs there was a basketball court, which was very rarely used. And so it was so good. We were able to start, well, I was able to start this second location, but still feel like I was in control of it. So although I had one of my students who started assistant teaching, so she then moved in to start teaching these classes, but I still felt like I was in control because I was there and I could still manage the parents and I could still make sure the kids were smiling and enjoying the classes. So this is sort of also the little steps of me delegating and being okay with handing things over, because that is a process which took a long time as well. So I also started then looking at hiring teachers that were outside of who I had, students who had previously become assistants. And I looked at hiring like a teacher to teach my senior girls, because I figured this was a point where I'd been, teaching these girls for so many years now, and I didn't feel like I could give them, more. I wanted to challenge them. And so that's when I got in my first couple of senior teachers to come and take my seniors. Also, a big thing that I did at this point was I started running the workshops in the school holidays, and I introduced our mid-year showcase, which is a game changer. It really was a game changer, the mid-year showcase. You've heard me talk about it before. So many benefits for the business, but it was just starting. So it was the first time we ran it. It was the first time that I was doing these workshops. So I was just getting the feel for it, but I was seeing the positive impact that it was having. So decided to keep running more with that. I wanted to interrupt this episode just for a moment to let you know something really exciting. In October of this year, I am launching my brand new program, Studio Balance. This program is for dance studio owners who want and need the processes and the simplest approach to setting your studio up for real growth. Studio Balance helps you identify, strategize, and implement every detail of studio setup, from systems and marketing to financial mastery and team leadership. I'm letting you know this now because I know many of you are starting to plan for the new year and how useful having this information will be. And with results like increasing enrollment numbers by 65% and adding revenue of $30,000, this is a program you do not want to miss out on. Right now, I'll be offering a bonus one-on-one implementation session for anyone who joins the waitlist and purchases Studio Balance. So if you want access to that, make sure you sign up to the waitlist. I'll leave the link in the show notes, or simply send me a DM on Instagram and I'll forward you the link. So moving then into 2012, so a couple of years later, we're now crept up to 500 students. I've now added more locations. This is the first time I now have an off-site location. So that was very hard again, like knowing that there were classes running and I wasn't there to be able to, make sure it was all happening. And this was being run by my cousin who I grew up dancing with, who had run her own studio. So she was completely capable. She was incredible. And so essentially she was, I say my first manager, but she was an area manager. She was managing that location, just speaking with the parents, making sure if any uniform orders were coming in, she was sort of updating that side of it. I was still doing all the other managing stuff, or the admin stuff. I was still doing that at this point. But I also, again, was expanding my timetable, adding in things I was listening and watching the trends, right? So Zumba was becoming a trend. So we started Zumba for kids classes. I brought in a specialized male teacher to run our boys only hip hop classes, which again, it wasn't really advertised back then. It wasn't really a thing. So I was making big deals about these, exciting new things coming to our studio, and it just grew and grew and grew. So it probably again comes down to marketing. Um, Although I wasn't as intentional marketing back then as I am now, but yeah, essentially it is, right? This is also the period where my husband and I, attended our first business seminar, which really changed the game for us with the way we were structuring the business. And I got my first coach. So again, it's stepping into that next evolution of what it was for me and my business. And I was just continually learning. All right. So then at this point, over the next couple of years, what was happening is I was growing and scaling by about 200 students each year, which when I was putting this together and I'm thinking back, that's mind blowing, right? At the time, I was just doing it and it was great. I didn't really consciously think, oh, that's amazing. But this is what was happening. And so what did I do? So let me tell you. There were more locations. So I continued to find locations, but I was choosing these locations quite strategically as well. So there was, this includes schools with after school care. So essentially, you've got clients on the premises, right? You've got kids there who are keen and willing. Their parents are happy for them to come to classes. I actually had one of our local schools call me, not the school, but a parent from the school saying, you don't know me, but there was a dance studio that was running classes out of the school hall, but she's no longer doing it anymore. We'd love, a dance studio to come in because her daughter was at after school care. And she said, there's a bunch of them that want to keep learning dance. Would you be happy to start? I said, of course I would. I mean, schools themselves are generally inexpensive, the rent of them. I had teachers that I could put there. So that became an intentional decision, going into schools. I also was in a community centre with a couple of rooms that we could teach from, and they were across the road from schools, and a shopping centre. So the traffic, we were being seen, we were in the community, we were in their faces. So that just brings in traffic walking by. Also during this time, I wrote and started a specific preschool program, and I advertised and I marketed that we were running this. And back then it wasn't even a thing. I'm sure studios were teaching that age group, but they weren't making a big deal about it. So with that program, I gave it its own name. I gave it its own branding. So still in line with our branding, but I made it this particular branding and name. And so I was advertising this. You've probably heard my story of how I started that, which was a great marketing a campaign that I ran. It was amazing and got a lot of kids from that. But also acro was becoming popular, so we started acro, and I was running parties as well. So just again, different sources of revenue stream was bringing. So your parties are bringing in new people. We would have party bags with a gift voucher for them to come and try a class. And so we were getting new enrollments from parties as well as making money on the parties. I also employed our first 2 full-time staff members at this point, which was a big, significant income, expense really, because I was paying for 2 full-time staff members, which is big. I also was focusing in on my training and my team. So being really intentional with how I was getting teachers, how I was training them, how the community we were building. And a big focus was growing my own teachers. So I wrote an assistant teacher training program because there was nothing online. I couldn't find anything. I then wrote a teacher training program because there was nothing online. And so because I wanted to be really strategic with how they were performing in class, what my expectations were, like the safety aspect, like child safety and protection, classroom management, like all this stuff that I wanted to train, I couldn't find, so I wrote it. And we were having regular training sessions each year. So my team knew exactly what they were doing. And then I was also bringing up those students who were, wanting to learn those leadership skills. Some were really great, others not so great, but they were still learning leadership skills. And many of them end up assistant teaching. And then I still to this day have them now becoming senior teachers. So they've worked their way through. So this was a big part. I think I mentioned earlier, I had a conversation with a beautiful studio owner this week as well, and she is young and she's starting out. So she's been going for a little while, but she's working full time and she's building up a studio on the side. And it was so refreshing speaking to her, and she's so enthusiastic. And she asked, "At what point did I step away?" And the reality is, it was about 15 to 17 years in. Like, it wasn't fast. But if you love what you're doing, it shouldn't be a punish to be there, right? Anyway, so that then moves us to about 2015, and this is where we peaked. This is where we hit that 1,200 student mark. My kids were now 9 and 11, so they were past that baby stage. They were still obviously young, but that hard slog of when they're young, it is hard and it takes its toll. So remember, now my girls are older. What did I do to get to this point? So we had purchased our own unit at this point. So it was another 2 studios, and we were running a studio hire business from it as well. So again, my husband just created this business where he hires out to lots of different people. Still to this day, we do it. It is so successful, as in brings in a lot of income. It helps with so much within the business. If it is possible for you to do something like that, I would highly recommend trying to work out how you can, because it's very helpful with little work from you, but will increase your income. I also, around this time, bought an existing studio. So that, of course, helped get our numbers up. She was a beautiful local lady who was moving out of state. She had this studio. It was about 20, 25 minutes from my other studio. So sort of close, but quite different. I didn't change the branding. I kept its own branding, but I was sharing my teachers. So I had teachers. And so that was sort of that big boost as well with numbers to get us to that mark. I was also, within a couple of years, we sort of stayed there. We also did open a brand new location studio, totally different area. And that was more just to test that what we were doing was still working. The stuff that I was having conversations with studio owners about, and I'm preaching all this stuff that worked for me, back in 2000, but I just wanted to make sure that it was still working, and I'm happy to say that it did. Another reason, we had one of my teachers who was, potentially, we could see she was on the road to being a fantastic manager and then ultimately owning her own studio. So in the back of our mind, we're like, well, we could do this, and then potentially she could walk into this. She did. She ran it, and she's now bought it. So it's hers. She's rebranded. She's doing exceptionally well as well. And so that also was starting as well. As I said, I stayed with this for a couple of years. I got to the point where I believe that I just maxed out my income versus my expenses. And so every new location or everything new that I implemented was almost going to cost just as much as it was that I would earn from it. And so I was actually feeling a little bit stretched, because I didn't feel like I was able to give enough love and attention to all the different locations. And I pride myself on knowing all the students and their names. And, I just felt like I couldn't do that. And so it was at that point, I'm like, you know what? I now need to consider my next chapter. And so that's when I actually sold one of the existing studio that I had previously bought. I sold that to one of my student who became teacher. She's taken that, and she's doing extremely well with that now. She's increased locations as well. And then the very first main location that I had was actually being knocked down. And so that was 2 studio spaces that we were about to lose. So I began to actually consolidate the locations that we had, which worked out really well, because of it, then my expenses were reduced, but I was still getting the income from it. It was working well. It also worked well because our locations were all quite close to each other. And so it wasn't a big deal for people to go to another location. And so that's basically, yeah, we then consolidated. We got to the point where it was just humming along beautifully. Of course, COVID hit. We, changed our business model like everybody else. We came out pretty well after COVID. I think we came out about 750, and which was, obviously we're really happy with. And then end of last year, I sold off the other studio that I was previously telling you about. So that's gone. So we've now consolidated down. We're sitting at about 500 now, and it feels nice. It feels manageable, and I'm really happy with where it's at. So that's the story. That's the timeline in a nutshell. And if you have questions about that, I'd love to start the conversation with you, because times have changed. I do get it, but there are still those foundations that aren't changing. And so anyway, let me break it down for you, because especially if you're taking notes, you know that I love a step-by-step process. So let me give it to you right now. So remember those 5 things I spoke about: getting clear on who you are, what you offer, do everything possible yourself in the beginning, be seen in the studio, so get known, build trust and that solid reputation in your community. Really, really important, that one. Listen and observe, so paying attention to the conversations and listening to that feedback. And then finally, building your systems. Because it's at that point, when that's all established, you're then ready to scale. And it is so exciting, let me tell you, scaling. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just break down each of the steps that if you're like, okay, I'm ready to start scaling, where do I start? Let me talk you through those steps right now. First thing would be location. It's time to upgrade your space or look for more locations. Obviously, you need space to bring in more in order to grow. And expanding to new locations is a fantastic way to reach new audiences and tap into the different markets. So you might recall I mentioned using halls at schools. Well, you've got a captured audience of possible students that can come, because that's with their smart decisions of where you choose those locations. However, it's also essential to maintain your consistency in your brand across all of the locations and trying to keep that quality up. So it's a bit tricky at times. We don't have control over spaces. Sometimes you can't control whether you've got a waiting area or a reception area. So you have to do your best to maintain the quality and the professionalism to the best of your ability. And keeping in mind that expansion involves a lot of planning and logistical challenges, which is a lot at the beginning. But once you have that system in place, so once you start multiplying your locations, you'll have a new system that you've built and a new way to do it. It becomes easier and easier each time. I do also want you to consider the financial implications. You don't want to be spending more than you're making. It's not a way to grow. And so you need to be in a position where you are doing these new things, but they need to be profitable for you or close to it. And I do realize there's sometimes you're going to be winning extra in some places and losing in others. So there is that balance. But right at the beginning, I would just be keeping a real eye on that. And the other thing I do want to highlight is have a look at the demographics of the new areas that you might be wanting to open, and think about the availability of teachers and staffing. I had a conversation with a studio owner friend not that long ago, and she was saying she's from a country area and really struggling to find teachers, and she didn't know whether to change her timetable or what to do. But it's a real issue. So just be aware, if you're in the city, you've got a big pool of options. But if you're further out, that might mean, having to fill those positions could be harder. So do keep that in mind. You don't want to be then stuck. We've got students, you've got a location, but then no teachers to take it. So do consider that as well. Okay, the next thing, step 2, would be your staffing. So as you scale your studio, it's crucial to determine your role in the studio. Where do you want to be? Like, where can you make the most significant impact? I know some studio owners still love teaching and they thrive in the classroom, and others want to work on the business and not be teaching anymore, so not be so front of house. This is different, but you just need to determine what that is for you. And at some point, you should have a clear definition of all the roles in your studio, from your teachers through to your administration staff. And it's really essential to establish expectations, create that detailed job description, and develop trainings and onboarding processes. So again, it becomes a system that happens to ensure that the quality of your team, the quality of your staff maintains at a high level. Because remember, you physically can't be at all these places at once. Your team represent you. So you want them to be the best possible. They're the backbone of the success of your studio. So investing in their growth and development is essential. Okay, step 3, my favorite word, innovate. So innovation is at the heart of scaling your studio. You need to keep thinking outside the box, creating new programs or coaching opportunities. Essentially, you need to continue to diversify your revenue streams. So consider adding extra things like extra offerings such as workshops or specialty classes, or maybe you might want to do a choreography surface. Like there's so many different ways you can diversify your revenue streams. But think about how you can utilize your studio space if it's possible. So it may not be possible. I do get that. And for many years, I didn't have that ability. But if it's possible, how can you use that space more efficiently to generate additional income? Birthday parties, workshops, all those little extras. It's about exploring new avenues for your studio's growth while still staying true to your brand's core values, though. So there's such a fine line. Like, at what point is it too much where you're not giving everything enough time to work and then be positive for you in your business versus not doing enough? So it is a fine line. A lot of it is honestly trial and error. I wish I could give you a more specific answer for that, but it is. But just I can really encourage you, continue to innovate. Keep trying to think, outside or a little bit ahead of what other people are doing. Okay, the next one, step 4, is the higher level conversations. So scaling your studio also means expanding your knowledge and thinking. Engaging in that higher level conversations with like-minded individuals and industry experts. And I think you should be talking with people in our industry and people not in our industry, because it expands us so much and we learn so much from that. My coach at the moment, she has nothing to do with our industry, and she's still she's so influential in me and my business decisions. She knows my business and she's giving me this advice and ideas and resources, and she has nothing to do with our industry, but I'm learning so much from her and growing from that. So, I really encourage you to look not only within our industry, but outside of that. And this is going to be for you, both personal and professional development. And we have so many more options now. We've got conferences and there's masterminds. The conversations will just help you generate innovative ideas and solve those complex problems that you may not have considered otherwise. It's about pushing the boundaries outside your thinking and embracing the mindset of growth and expansion. And this is what I love so much about our mastermind is the studio owners in it we're at a level where we're not thinking about the little things anymore. It's the big things. And when we come together as a group and we share ideas and challenges, it's other people like, oh, have you tried this? Or this is what we did and it worked, or this is what we did and it didn't work. Like, it's sharing that the thought processes and the ideas is where you continue to grow. And you can hear, I love it, right? That is growth. And that's what you're doing at a scaling stage. Okay, and step 5, this will be the last one, is just investing in different areas of your business. So as your studio scales, you'll need to invest in various areas of your business to support the growth. This could be new programs. There's lots of programs out there that might support you, getting specialized teachers or staff. That may look like getting a social media manager or a marketing expert to help you out. Or maybe it's business coaching or programs for yourself to help navigate the challenges of managing a rapidly expanding dance studio, right? So your challenges are going to be different when you're scaling versus when you were trying to grow and build those solid foundations before you get to this point. And while it might feel uncomfortable to invest both time and money, these investments are what's essential to your studio's long-term success. They essentially allow you to learn to trust yourself, which is a big thing. They allow your decisions and ultimately see a really strong return on your investment. And again, when you're getting to this stage, your mindset changes a little bit. So, you do start to trust a little bit. It might feel a bit uncomfortable, but this is sort of the next step, that uncomfortable bit of growing. And I always go back to, when I'm starting to feel uncomfortable, I must be in a growth period. And usually it works out. And thankfully, usually it's on the positive side. So that's really good. Okay, so they are the 5 steps. So in summary, these were the foundations of my studio growth. Obviously, I went into a little bit more detail of what that all looked like at the time. But it's also what I leaned on to scale and continue to scale over that period of time. And, so it starts from upgrading locations to innovating to investing. These are the strategies that made all the difference. And then once you get to that point, then you step into the next phase, which is obviously a topic for another podcast, but it is certainly exciting. Okay, remember, I just want to finish off by saying I've been where you are and I understand the challenges, particularly of investing time and money. I totally get it. But I just ask, if you trust me, then when you do these things, whether it is time or money, the return on investment can be incredible and you can take your studio to wherever you want. Okay, that is it for today's episode. I hope that you've gained some valuable insights or some inspiration. If you're at a stage where you're looking to scale your studio, or maybe it's something that you're planning in a few years, it's certainly exciting. But I just want to thank you again. I appreciate and I am so grateful for you joining me. And remember, success is just a few steps away. We just have to continually tick over and then it happens. All right. So thank you again. Have a really great week and I will chat with you next week. And that's a wrap for this week's episode. I'm so grateful to have you listen each week. If you found today's episode valuable, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate, 5 stars of course, and leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback empowers me to keep delivering insightful content. To ensure you never miss an episode, hit that subscribe button and be sure to follow me on Instagram @_JenDalton_ and join our private Facebook group, Dance Studio Empire. Until next time, keep dancing, keep thriving, and keep building your dance studio empire.